a distant kingdom, surrounded by majestic mountains and dense forests, where tales of courage and wisdom intertwine in the breezes that blow through the trees. It is in this vibrant setting that we find the city of Benares, a bustling place of trade and culture. Here, two caravan leaders prepare for a journey that will forever change their lives. On one side, we have the future Buddha, a man with a serene and determined gaze. From a young age, he learned to observe the world with an open mind and a generous heart. For him, each step is an opportunity for growth, each challenge a lesson to be learned. With 500 carts loaded with precious goods, he stands out not only for the quantity of his wares, but for the wisdom he carries within. He reflects, on this journey, true wealth lies not just in what we carry but in how we choose to walk. On the other side is the second caravan leader, a hasty, impulsive man lacking vision. He is the opposite of the future Buddha, short-sighted and eager for immediate success. As he looks at his own carts, he imagines himself ahead, oblivious to the consequences of his actions. For him, the journey is a competition, and his only goal is to be the first to reach the destination. He feels the adrenaline coursing through his veins and hardly notices the shadow of recklessness creeping up behind him. As the two leaders prepare to depart, a dilemma begins to take shape. The future Buddha, with his innate wisdom, feels a stirring in his chest. If we both depart at the same time, he thinks, the road will become chaotic. What can I do to prevent this? He approaches the other leader and proposes a solution. Friend, it would be better for you to go first. That way, we can avoid the turmoil that would arise from so many carts on the road. The other leader, attracted by the prospect of advantages in being first, accepts the proposal, unaware of what is truly at stake. As he sets off, proud of his decision, the future Buddha watches silently, realizing that his choice to go last is not merely a logistical matter but a deep reflection on patience, wisdom, and the true essence of success. And so, under the blue and radiant sky of Benares, two paths begin to unfold, each guided by decisions that will define the fate of each man and their respective teams. The sun began to rise on the horizon, painting the sky in gold and pink, as the sounds of the city of Benares slowly awakened. The markets began to come alive, and the aroma of spices and freshly baked bread danced in the air. Yet, amidst the daily hustle and bustle, a sense of anticipation hung over the two caravan leaders. Today was the day their journeys would intertwine with the mysteries of the desert. The future Buddha looked at his 500 carts, meticulously loaded. Each one was filled with valuable goods, shimmering silks, gleaming jewels, and rare spices, all carefully chosen. He did not just see the material possessions. He saw the responsibility that came with each item. This is not merely a commercial journey, he thought. It is an opportunity for learning, to uncover the truths life has to offer. Beside him, the other caravan leader was anxious, his eyes shining with ambition. He checked his own loads, patting the goods and letting out chuckles of satisfaction. For him, each cart was a chance for quick enrichment, a path to fame and glory. He dreamed of being the first to reach the destination, imagining himself receiving accolades and praises from all upon his return. The men were ready. The atmosphere of anxiety heightened as the traders gathered, ready to set off. The future Buddha called his team together, a diverse group of men and women who respected him not only as a leader but as a spiritual guide. Remember, he said with a firm yet gentle voice, on this journey, we must keep our focus not only on the goods we carry, but on how we conduct ourselves. True value lies in the wisdom we gain along the way. Meanwhile, the other caravan leader, already impatient, began to call his team, urging them to climb aboard their carts. Let's go. The day is young, and success awaits us. His hasty tones spread nervousness among his men, who rushed to comply, fearing they would miss the opportunity. At last, the moment arrived. The two groups made their way to the city exit, the future Buddha following slightly behind as planned. The carts creaked and the wheels turned in the dust, tracing a path that stretched before them like a long, winding journey. As they advanced, the future Buddha felt the gentle breeze, filled with promises and uncertainties. He could not help but think of the stories awaiting them, the lessons that would unfold amid the scorching sands of the desert. As the carts moved forward, the surrounding landscape began to change. The tall, lush trees of Benares gave way to vast expanses of sand and rock. The heat of the sun intensified, and the travelers felt thirst beginning to take hold. It was at this moment that the other caravan leader, confident and heedless, decided to distance himself from the group, determined to pursue his own path in search of advantage. In the heart of the desert, where the horizon blurred with the blue sky, a shadowy presence began to form. The ogre, a feared creature that inhabited local legends, was lurking. He had the power to seduce those who were weak in spirit, leading them to ruin with his illusions. He was a cunning being, and today he was ready to test the determination of the reckless caravan leader. As the caravan leader pressed on, admiring his goods and dreaming of the profits he would soon reap, the ogre appeared, adorned with lotus flowers and surrounded by a mysterious glow. He looked like any other traveler, but there was something in his features that exuded power and deceit. The ogre smiled, his expressions radiating camaraderie and friendship. "Ah, friend," the ogre exclaimed with a voice as smooth as silk. "I see you are a shrewd man, traveling with such wealth. Tell me, would you not like to rid yourself of that heavy burden of water? Ahead, there are lakes filled to the brim, and the rain never ceases. Why not get rid of what you don't need and travel lighter?" The caravan leader, seduced by the ogre's words, began to be swayed. He looked at the water barrels, contemplating how cumbersome they were and how each extra drop weighed down his wheels. "You are right," he shouted, his voice full of excitement. "Why should I carry this unnecessary weight when fresh, abundant water awaits? The journey will be so much easier." He began giving orders, instructing his team to break the barrels and pour out the precious water, laughing carefree. The ogre watched, his smile widening as the group became lighter and more vulnerable. "You will not regret it," the ogre said, his voice now laden with a dark echo. "Traveling light is traveling happy." The caravan leader, convinced he had made the right choice, moved forward with a light spirit, while the ogre vanished into the shadows of the desert, satisfied with the naive mind he had manipulated. With each step the group took, disillusionment began to form in the sand beneath them. As the day progressed, the heat became relentless. Thirst turned into an incessant ghost, and mirages began to dance in the distance. The caravan leader began to feel a sense of unease, but he believed he was approaching his reward. The desire for a lighter load had clouded his judgment. Meanwhile, at another point in the desert, the future Buddha and his team advanced cautiously, all the barrels intact, each drop of water carefully preserved. He observed the vastness before him, keeping his mind clear and his eyes alert. He knew that the desert had its own rules and, above all, that appearances could deceive. Hearing murmurs of thirst and weakness from his men, the future Buddha recalled the words he always shared with them. True wisdom lies not only in knowing when to act but also in recognizing when to resist temptation. Beware of what seems easy. True security lies in preparation and patience. As both groups continued their parallel journeys, the consequences of their choices began to unfold. The ogre, with his malicious plan in motion, waited, ready to observe the outcome of his manipulation, while thirst and insecurity began to cast shadows over the reckless caravan leader's journey. In the silence of the desert, as the sun shone brightly, the future Buddha advanced with his caravan, his thoughts always alert. Each cart was loaded with goods, but more importantly, they were filled with confidence and determination. He knew the desert was unforgiving, and true wisdom lay in being prepared for the unexpected. The men accompanying him were hardworking, but they were also human, subject to weaknesses and fears. The future Buddha felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, and so he decided to take an important measure. He gathered everyone around him, his calm and secure gaze drawing their attention. "Listen," he began, his serene voice cutting through the heat of the day. "We are about to enter a part of the desert where many have lost their way. Thirst and fatigue can deceive us. Therefore, we must be vigilant. Each of you has an essential role in this journey. Without our water, we will have no strength to continue." He raised his hand, pointing to the barrels they carried. "Before we use a single drop of water, we must make a choice. If we find water along the way, we may use it wisely. But until then, it is crucial that we preserve what we have. Remember, those who rush into their decisions often reap ruin. The men listened intently, feeling inspired by his words. The determination of the future Buddha was contagious. His eyes sparkled with the clarity of someone who had seen the highs and lows of life. He had learned that patience and reflection were more valuable than any treasure he could carry. As they moved forward, he kept his senses sharp, observing the changing landscape around them. With each step, he noted the subtle shifts in the environment, how the sand moved in the wind, how the shadows stretched. The desert had its stories, and he was willing to listen to them. Then, at a point where the sun was at its strongest, the group found a small oasis, with palm trees gently swaying and a spring of pure water gushing. The sight was a reward, a moment of relief after the long trek under the scorching heat. The gaze of the men lit up, and they could hardly believe they had found a treasure in the middle of the desert. But the future Buddha did not let himself be swept away by the emotion of the moment. He immediately organized the men and, firmly, said, "Before anyone rushes in, we need to assess the situation. Who knows what other challenges we may yet face? Let's fill our barrels, but we also need to keep our reserves. We don't know what lies ahead." The men, inspired by his wisdom, followed his instructions. Carefully, they began to fill the barrels, all the while maintaining their caution. As they worked, the future Buddha observed, aware that the true test of character did not only reside in moments of abundance, but also in the choices made during adversity. Soon, the caravan was moving again, and the sense of security that once dominated the group was now intertwined with the awareness of future challenges. The future Buddha, in his wisdom, knew the desert did not forgive the reckless, and that the lessons they were learning now would be crucial for what lay ahead. The heat of the desert continued to scorch, and dust rose with every movement. The sun was nearly at its zenith, casting a blinding light that made the journey even more arduous. While the caravan of the future Buddha advanced with determination and caution, the group led by the other caravan leader began to face the consequences of their hasty choices. Without water, the team of the reckless caravan leader began to feel the effects of thirst. Faces that were once full of confidence now bore signs of despair and weakness. The air was thick with an uncomfortable silence, broken only by groans of fatigue and the creaking of wheels on the dry ground. The caravan leader, who had been swayed by the ogre's seduction and the idea of traveling light, now walked among his men with a worried expression. He had ignored the warnings from the future Buddha, and now, in the middle of the relentless desert, his recklessness was laid bare. "Let's go. The water must be near," he shouted, trying to rally his group, but his words echoed hollow amidst the rising anxiety. The men began to glance at one another, hope draining away like the water they had discarded. Reality began to sink in, and panic infiltrated the weary minds. Desperate, some began to question if they had made the right choice. "Why did we follow the advice of a stranger?" Murmurs of regret began to circulate. "We should have kept the water. Now we are lost." Complaints grew louder, as if each word cast more sand into the hourglass of their own survival. In that moment, as the sun burned their faces and thirst became unbearable, the group spotted a mirage in the distance, what appeared to be a shimmering lake glistening under the sun. One man, unable to contain his hope, pointed, "Look, water, finally." But the future Buddha, who was further away, observed the scene with an attentive and concerned gaze. He knew that mirages could be deceiving in the desert, and the true water could be much farther away. He could not allow the despair and the illusory vision of the oasis to lead those men to ruin. "Wait," he shouted, his firm voice cutting through the hot air. "That is not real. We need to continue with caution." Unfortunately, the mind of the reckless caravan leader had already been overtaken by despair. He did not heed the warnings of the future Buddha. With blind determination, he decided to push forward, convinced that water awaited him. The group, mostly hesitant, followed their leader, like puppets manipulated by an invisible string of ambition. As they drew closer, the mirage faded, revealing only sand and rocks, devoid of life. The disillusionment hit them like a blow, and the reality of their situation crashed down upon them like a sandstorm. Now, with nothing but despair, the leader looked around, realizing they had thrown away their only hope for survival. Thirst was now unbearable, and despair began to reign. The men, now exhausted and disillusioned, started to crumble. The strength that once united them had vanished, replaced by an atmosphere of tension and doubt. The caravan leader, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, began to understand the gravity of his actions. Meanwhile, the future Buddha and his caravan continued to move forward, maintaining focus and determination. They were aware of the challenges, but also confident in the choices they had made. Each drop of water they preserved became a blessing, an anchor that kept them steady on the right path. Night fell over the desert like a deep, silent cloak. The stars began to shine, like tiny beacons in the vast sky, illuminating the golden sand under the silvery light of the moon. For the future Buddha, this calmness was a reminder that night also brought hidden challenges. He knew that darkness could conceal dangers, and vigilance was a necessary virtue. The future Buddha's group had set up a safe camp, the carts arranged in a circle, forming an improvised fortress against the uncertainties of the night. The men were tired, but the safety of the shelter provided a sense of relief. The future Buddha, however, did not allow himself to relax. He knew that, in the desert, tranquility often precedes unexpected storms. With a watchful eye, he instructed the men to prepare for the night watch. Some of you will rest, while others will keep vigil. Tonight, we must be alert. The desert has its own inhabitants, and many do not come with good intentions, he said, his voice firm and encouraging. The team nodded, knowing he had always guided them wisely. The future Buddha walked around the camp, ensuring everyone was comfortable, but also aware of the responsibility they bore. The silence of the night was profound, interrupted only by the whispering wind and the occasional grunt of a distant creature. As the men took turns on watch, the future Buddha sat in a corner, meditating and observing the vastness before him. He knew that darkness could be a space for reflection, and there, under the starry sky, he allowed himself to ponder the events of the day. The recklessness of the other caravan leaders still echoed in his mind. What could have been avoided? What more could be done to help those who were lost in their own ambition? In the stillness of the night, the future Buddha sensed movement in the shadows, something that only the most attentive could perceive. With a keen eye, he saw figures approaching in the distance. They were ogres, drawn by the scent of weakness and despair. They moved silently, with the cunning of predators on the hunt. "Prepare yourselves," he whispered to those awake, his heart racing. "The darkness conceals enemies. They come in search of the unprepared." The men stood, adjusting their positions, feeling the weight of tension in the air. The desert, which had seemed so peaceful before, now revealed its treacherous nature. The ogres, with their grotesque forms, began to emerge from the shadows, their eyes shining with a voracious malevolence. They laughed softly, as if sharing a sinister secret among themselves. "Let's take advantage of these men's weakness," one of them whispered, drawing the attention of the others. The future Buddha, realizing the situation was escalating, quickly devised a plan. "Let's not panic. Stay calm and remember what we have learned," he said, looking into the eyes of his men. "We have something they do not, the strength of unity and wisdom." With determination, he raised his voice, calling the attention of the ogres. "Turn back to the path of truth. The weakness you seek is not here. Do not be deceived by illusions. We are united and ready to face any challenge." The ogres hesitated, surprised by the audacity of the future Buddha. He stood firm, surrounded by his team, altogether strong and determined. It was a powerful sight, a testament that even in the darkest depths, the light of courage and wisdom could shine brightly. Then, a wave of courage swept through the team. With united voices, they began to chant words of strength and protection, creating a chorus that echoed through the desert. The song rose and mingled with the wind, transforming into an invisible shield against the approaching evil forces. The ogres, perplexed by the resistance they encountered, began to retreat, their laughter turning into murmurs of frustration. The future Buddha, sensing that the strategy was working, intensified his efforts. True strength does not lie in weapons, but in unity and determination. We do not fear the darkness. And so, on that silent night, beneath the watchful stars, the vigilance and courage of the future Buddha became a legend. The ogres, unable to breach the barrier of light emanating from the caravan, finally retreated into the shadows. The desert once again fell silent. The men, relieved, sank into a deep sleep, exhausted but safe. The future Buddha, still vigilant, contemplated the stars and felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. The night had been a test, but the victory was a confirmation of the strength that resides in wisdom and unity. And as dawn approached, he knew that much more lay ahead, but now he was prepared to face any challenge. The sun began to rise on the horizon, painting the sky in radiant orange and gold, as the first rays of light pierced the darkness of the previous night. The future Buddha and his caravan were preparing to continue their journey, the feeling of renewal and hope hanging in the air. After a tense night, they were ready to confront whatever the desert had in store for them. As they advanced, the desert stretched out before them, vast and mysterious, like an open book filled with stories waiting to be discovered. The future Buddha was determined to teach his men to stand firm, not only in body but also in mind and heart. With each step, he encouraged his companions, highlighting the importance of patience and wisdom. Finally, after several hours of walking under the increasing heat, they reached a more open area where the sand became finer and rock formations rose like sentinels. It was there that the future Buddha spotted something that made his heart race. The caravan of the reckless leader was stopped, filled with carts and goods, but surrounded by a disturbing silence. "Stop," he ordered, gesturing for everyone to approach cautiously. The atmosphere was charged with an odd tension, and he felt that something was very wrong. He was one of the first to approach, his watchful gaze scanning the terrain as the others followed, intrigued and apprehensive. When they got closer, what they found was a desolate scene. The other leader's caravan was loaded with intact carts, but the men were lying on the sand, exhausted and despondent. Some appeared to be dehydrated, while others looked around, incredulous and hopeless. The future Buddha recognized the situation immediately. They had fallen into a trap. "What happened here?" he asked one of the men who struggled to rise. The man's eyes were weary, but there was a glimmer of relief upon seeing the future Buddha's caravan. "We were deceived," he exclaimed, his voice trembling with despair. The leader disregarded the warnings. He listened to promises of water and riches and discarded everything we had. Now we are at the mercy of the desert. The future Buddha looked around, recognizing the burden the other leader carried, and felt a wave of compassion. "We need to help them," he said, turning to his men. "We have water and we can share." The men from the future Buddha's caravan began to work, filling barrels and offering water to their companions, reviving those on the brink of collapse. Every drop was a reminder of the importance of prudence and the strength of unity shown through every gesture. While they helped others, the future Buddha stepped back slightly, his thoughts focused on the other caravan leader. He found him sitting in the shade of one of the carts, head down, expression marked by regret. The future Buddha approached him, his presence soft and welcoming. "You have learned a hard lesson," he said, not with reproach but with an understanding tone. "The desert is not just a physical test, but also a test of character. What matters is not what we have, but how we choose to use what we have." The other leader lifted his eyes, a mix of shame and gratitude in his tired features. "I thought ease and speed were the way to wealth. Now I see that wisdom is the true treasure." The future Buddha smiled gently, recognizing the value of acknowledgement. True wealth comes from within. Learning from our mistakes is the first step toward growth. As the caravan regrouped, the future Buddha organized the men, ready to move on. They had discovered not only the consequences of recklessness, but also the importance of compassion and mutual aid. With the other leaders' caravan now receiving care, they continued onward, the future Buddha leading the way, determined to face the challenges still ahead. The desert, with its harsh lessons, proved to be unforgiving. The path of the reckless caravan leader was now a trail of regret, a journey that would teach him, in the hardest way, how hasty decisions could lead to ruin. The sun was now at its peak, casting radiant light over the desert, which seemed more vibrant than ever. The caravan of the future Buddha, filled with revitalized and grateful men, moved forward with a new spirit. The desert, which once appeared as an arena of hardships and challenges, now revealed itself as a vast field of opportunities shaped by the lessons they had learned. After helping the men of the other caravan leader, the confidence of the future Buddha grew even stronger. He was not just leading a caravan. He was building a community, an unbreakable bond among those who accompanied him. With every kilometer they advanced, he shared teachings on patience, wisdom, and the importance of listening to one's inner voice. As they continued their journey, they began to glimpse the city in the distance. The silhouette of Benares's towers stood out against the blue sky, a sign that the journey was coming to an end. However, the future Buddha knew that the true test was not just arriving at the destination, but what each of them had brought along the way. The other caravan leader, now aware of the consequences of his recklessness, walked alongside the future Buddha. With each step, he felt more relieved but also more introspective. "What will you do when we reach the city?" he asked, a mix of curiosity and apprehension in his voice. The future Buddha smiled, his eyes shining with understanding. "When we arrive, I will sell the goods, just as you will. But more important than what we will gain is what we will carry in our hearts. The true value lies in the experiences we have had and the lessons we have learned." As they entered the city, the heat and noise enveloped them like a familiar embrace. The market pulsed with life, traders shouting, people laughing and bargaining, the smell of spices and freshly baked bread in the air. It was a vibrant scene, and they were back in the center of their lives, but now with a new perspective. The future Buddha quickly began to negotiate his goods. He offered the spices and products he brought, not just for the price, but as a recognition of the value of hard work and honesty. He spoke with the buyers, sharing stories about the journey and the wisdom gained in the desert. The other caravan leader, watching all of this, was impressed. He approached the future Buddha, a new humility in his eyes. "How do you manage this?" he asked. "People seem so drawn to you, as if you have something I can never attain." The future Buddha looked at him with compassion. "What you see is not just a matter of goods, but the truth that emanates from our actions. When we are honest and genuine, people connect with our essence. The true treasure is the trust and respect we cultivate." As the future Buddha continued to negotiate, he saw that buyers were willing to pay more than expected, not only for the quality of the goods, but for the connection they felt with the generous-hearted leader. He was not just a merchant. He was a beacon of wisdom and compassion, and that resonated deeply with people. The day unfolded, and soon the men from the future Buddha's caravan were celebrating. The sales were successful, and they returned home not just with profits but with something far more significant, a sense of achievement and belonging. In that moment of victory, the future Buddha turned to the other caravan leader and said, "You too can find this value. Learning to listen to your intuition and respect others is the way to true wealth. Every mistake is an opportunity for growth." As the other leader looked around, he realized the joy in his men, the unity they had formed, and the wisdom they now carried. He smiled, understanding that it was no longer just about material goods, but the legacy they would leave behind. In the city of Benares, amidst the bustling market and the smiles of the people, the future Buddha and his caravan celebrated not just a successful journey but a profound transformation. They had faced difficulties, learned from mistakes, and were now ready to move forward in their lives with a new light. And so, under the sky that was now tinged with soft colors at dusk, the caravan of the future Buddha, united and strong, bid farewell to the desert. The true treasure was not in the goods they brought, but in the lessons they learned and the truths they would carry forever in their hearts. This journey had become a story that would be told and retold, a testament to the strength of wisdom and the truth that prevails even in the sands of the desert. Thanks for watching. In this story, you learned about the Buddhist parable of the two caravan leaders and the teaching that this text has to give us. Don't forget to click like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Share with your friends and leave your comments below about what you thought of this story. We always bring stories with lessons for modern life.